Welcome everyone. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes. We're going to give people a couple minutes to join us. Hello and welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Karen Kinsell, the director of the Palo Alto Art Center. I am delighted to be here with you all for our first lecture in conjunction with the exhibition Where the Heart Is, Contemporary Art by Immigrant Artists. We unfortunately are not able to be open due to the current health restrictions, but we are very hopeful we will be able to open during the run of the exhibition before it closes on April 3rd. Until then, we are delighted to be able to offer this series of virtual talks to engage all of you in the wonderful work in the exhibition. Before I introduce Jiha Moon, I would like to thank the members and supporters of the Palo Alto Art Center Foundation who make programs like this possible. And I would also like to thank our exhibition funder, the National Endowment for the Arts. Jiha Moon is from Korea and lives and works in Atlanta. She received her MFA from the University of Iowa, Iowa City. Her works have been acquired by the Asia Society, the High Museum of Art in Atlanta, the Mint Museum of Art in Charlotte, North Carolina, the Smithsonian Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden in Washington, the Weatherspoon Museum of Art in Greensboro, North Carolina, the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts in Richmond, Virginia. And she has had solo exhibitions at the Museum of Contemporary Art of Georgia, the Mint Museum of Art in Charlotte, the Cheekwood Museum of Art in Nashville, Rhodes College, the James Gallery of CUNY Graduate Center in New York, and group shows in venues around the country. She is the recipient of the prestigious Joan Mitchell Foundation's Painter and Sculptor Award for 2011, and the MoCA Georgia Working Artists Project Fellow in 2012 to 13, and the Arcadia Award 2016. Her mid-career survey exhibition, Double Welcome, Most Everyone's Mad Here, organized by the Halsey Institute of Contemporary Art and the Tubman Museum, has toured more than 10 museum venues around the country in 2018. Welcome, Jiha Moon.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm kind of sad that I can't come visit you guys due to pandemic, but I'm really excited about this opportunity to talk about my work. So I brought a lot of slides, and the work that I mostly put about last 10 to 15 years. So I'm going to show you a group of work, a painting, sculpture, print, and some of the installation. And I have some fun pictures that I have put it in this slide discussion for reference images as well. So the first image you see is actually a screenshot from my research I did on Disney's movie Alice in Wonderland. And this was the animation that adaptation from 1865 novel Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventure in Wonderland. It's a children's story, but I'm sure you all know about, but it had a lot of like different, a version of animations and movies and, even play. So this quote actually from the Disney animation, I really thought that this sort of represent the work that I did for the traveling exhibition. Um, that quote is actually about when Alice got lost. She's trying to find the Met Tea Party. And then when she encountered Cheshire Cat, and Cheshire Cat sort of comes out and then acting like he's guiding her to find where the tea party is, but then actually becomes sort of naughty and then confuses her as well, and comes out and disappear and repeat that. And also he mentioned that oh, in the tea at the tea party everybody's sort of crazy. So I thought about this quote, thinking about how we are engaging in this world. And if you look around, then there's a lot of crazy things happening, and you sort of feel that where's just normal regular people, and then you realize a lot of people deal with the everyday drama. And I really thought that was interesting conversation here that sort of represent contemporary, like uh, living as well. So I thought about this figure, Cheshire Cat also. For me, Cheshire Cat sort of represent bigger force. For some people, that could be religion. So they could say that it's my God, or for some people, it could be very important figure. Like for me, my Cheshire Cat kind of figure is like my mom. Um, so you could get scared of. Also, you love the that bigger force, and then sometimes you rely on. And it's also for me a kind of conflict as well. And so I was thinking about if I make a work about Cheshire Cat, like Cheshire Cat sort of represents something bigger force, and it's kind of important, kind of scary. At the same time, like I want that bigger force to be something more funny and reliable, also you can interact with. So it has a little bit of everything. And I start making a painting about sort of that in between sort of a figure. So this is my version of Cheshire Cat. So for me, I started out as a painter, and I was an oil painter for a long time. And then as I moved to US and for my graduate study, for 3 years, I did make oil painting. So I did pretty much focus on Western style of, art making for a long time. And then after I graduated, I realized, my studio situation wasn't really allowing me to have all those, fancy stuff I used to have in my studio. So I had to ditch oil on canvas because I literally had just one little table in my little attic with my husband. We didn't have a window, and we lived with lots of roommates. So we somehow have to figure out how to make work. So that's when I started um, working with water-based media. So I use uh, ink, acrylic on lots of different papers. And my attitude towards using the material become very personal and more being very specific. So all of this work that you see is all done with water-based media, meaning acrylic on canvas, acrylic on paper, sometimes on loose Korean mulberry paper, or sometimes on the paper that mounted on canvas or panel surfaces. So oftentimes I start out like really kind of abstract mark makings, and then with spill or like large brush stroke, lots of different mark making, I sort of form the shapes and then trying to figure out how I want to develop my images. So oftentimes my work look like a landscape, and I also sort of combine the landscape with iconographies, or in this case, like, within the landscape, you can kind of see the face in and out. I was sort of trying to create, the face in a way, so this is, I guess, kind of combine the landscape with the portrait quality as well. So this one actually called Most Everyone's Met Here. And I was actually thinking about Cheshire Cat. As you can see, I pointed out, like here, if you see my cursor, there's like eyes you could kind of see, and then there's like I guess Cheshire Cat like grin. And then there's lots of different iconographies. So one of my things that I really enjoy making painting is that, I hide stuff in within the different places. So my work is heavily camouflage. So stuff that you see sometimes, like other people don't see it, or at first you see it, but then as you see my work longer time, some other elements come out. So I really am hoping that people can see my work more than once and then sort of figure out their own way to engage with each images and iconography is also complex of different spaces. This one called Familiar Face. So I was looking at different masks and characters from different cultures. So you'll see the figures and then they're sort of there, but also disappear. And my figuration also interact with abstraction. So they're always sort of in between places. And here, if you guys, I guess, interested in ceramic work, which I have tons of slides later on, there's a pattern called blue willow. It's embedded in this work. I really was fascinated by blue willow patterns because it's a way of understanding for Western people to enjoy, I guess, like Eastern sort of storytelling or the fantasy. Um, but blue willow is actually created in British company and design. And it is not really originally from Asian traditional, pattern or country. So, and I thought that was kind of interesting that how Western people have their own fantasy about understanding or make up the story about, East. And this one called Beautiful Country. Beautiful Country literally translate to America. That's how Koreans and China and Japan, those Asian country called beautiful country is in Chinese character called America. And when I think about America, you know, uh, 4th of July, the celebration, and fireworks, and those things sort of like kind of represent America. And also here I combine with fortune cookies. And it's funny because fortune cookie is American invention, but no one knows in China what fortune cookies are, but people sort of misunderstand about exotic Asian quality by going to Chinese restaurant. But not these days, people are a lot more experienced and educated, but there's definitely misunderstanding about like, Eastern Western cultures. And then I start combining different paintings in order to make a complex layer of like fan-shaped painting. So the previous one, I had one single image based on like Asian fan-shaped paintings. So here I have, painting within another painting. So layering two landscape. And as I develop my painting, it gets more and more. And then I sort of get out of the format of Western traditional, like rectangular or square format of painting that often people without thinking about just like receive, this is how painting should be. Well, but then I really like the quality of like how shapes are organic, sort of symmetrical, but also it's not really rectangular shape. It resembles also like screens or other, like heart or different shapes of things. Um, Also, when I'm doing multiple fan paintings, and I also talk about the as a whole world, as a big, connected, interconnected, larger as a larger society. So little, while we can look at the little paintings, and then we also see all these combined like 15, 20 different paintings at the same time. So you have the experience of personally viewing a smaller space at the same time, what's going on at large. So for me, it talks about like how I, you know, chat with my mom on, I guess, like, Facebook or something, or Zoom on a personal level, but at the same time on the same screen monitor, I listen or to NPR or watch CNN news. So the basically, I thought that like, um, this world is so interconnected, and even though I'm super far away from my home, my Korean home base, uh, I still feel kind of connected and very close, especially this pandemic. I mean, it's just horrible things happening to us, but at some level, I feel like people are trying to be connected more and more because of that. And then how technology is so amazingly connect everybody at some level. In right now, like I'm super far away from you guys, and right now in Atlanta, it's around 8:20, and then you are about like 5 o'clock over there. And I could have this discussion using the technology Zoom. So I really feel that there's some definitely connection that we make through this pandemic time. And then this painting is done, this series done about like 2013, 14. And then at that time, I was more thinking about how technology is sort of separating people because everybody has their cell phone and texting with people. And then phone, it's kind of funny because like people don't use phone to talk so much, but every other things that they use uh, through phone. And I thought that this technology, you know, is this connecting people or separating people? So at that time, I was thinking about that mostly. And now I'm looking back my paintings that, it's, I guess it's kind of both. It's connecting and separating people. So this work basically all on work on paper, so mulberry paper, and some area I did a screen print. And then the background over here, you see where my cursor is moving. That's tie-dye fabric that I have. So I use several different mediums to paint, to collage, and to screen print, so that there's a different technique that I adopt to finish these paintings. And then this one called Yellow Wave. And then I sort of connecting with this big yellow brush stroke that also colorfully also connect the entire picture around all together. But I think this is about like 15, more than 15, 17 painting put together. And you'll see different Korean iconographies and characters, fortune cookies, and then also Pennsylvania Dutch. I was really obsessed with Pennsylvania Dutch for a while because I had opportunity to travel Philadelphia. I did a workshop there with the museum called Fabric Workshop and Museum. And I got to eat my lunch right next to the museum. There's a market called the Terminal Market, and where these Amish people come and sell their bread. And I got to know their story a lot. So I kind of researched my own about Pennsylvania Dutch and what it means. And those are people also immigrant from the European country. But then they become their own culture, which I think is part of American folk art now. So here I, pretty much from a distance, you see my imagery very Asian, Asian style, but there's a lot of different influences that are based in America as well. And then I create work with more collaborating with different mediums. This one kind of resembled to Korean blanket. So the outside, the borders, my grandmom actually helped me to quilt these things. And rainbow stripes, that pattern itself sort of represent the happiness and longevity based in Korean culture. And everyone would know what this fabric pattern means, because we use this pattern for children's birthday, parents' birthday, wedding, and any important, family-related event. These fabric patterns become very popular. And within that image, I use painting as well. So it does look like a blanket, but at the same time looks like a frame, but with inside it's a painting. And then I used the letter design based on Korean folk art. It's called 문자도, which is based on Korean Confucianism, like kind of didactic in a way, tell people like what to do. Like you have to respect older elders. You have to, be diligent, and, those sort of like, theory that everybody sort of have to practice every day. But here, instead of those like, language, I used American slang. And especially this expression is really popular in the South where I live. So it looks like, picture or a letter in Korean letters, but it says bless your heart. And I'm sure some of you have heard of that before. And bless your heart kind of goes to both way, like, oh, really sincerely bless your heart, but also at the same time, oh, poor you, you have no clue. So it's a kind of interesting idiom. And then I explore more with my fan shape, so sort of liberating from the multiple fan painting, and then come out of the page, and then sort of become more mixed media and incorporate with other imageries. And then I also use lots of different iconographies. And one of the things that you see repeatedly around my work, is peach, because peach is a very popular symbol in Asian country. It has a meaning of chasing the bad spirit away. But in the South, where I live, peach is the symbol of South and Georgia. So I often use in a very different way of like double or triple meanings. And also like, peach, the way that in Korean manuscript paintings, they are described almost like painted like bosom or like a butt, or the very sensational, also sexual in a way. It sort of brings people's attention. I think it's kind of interesting how one sort of iconography can be read in so many different ways. And then I start using here with these two paintings done on mylar surface, which is a plastic paper, which is kind of conflict because it's not really a paper, it's a plastic sheet, but people use for drafting the architectures using to draw like architecture drafting stuff. But I really like the fact that this sort of get rid of sort of the Asian kind of look and my imagery become more contemporary. So I do use different surfaces as well, besides Korean mulberry paper. And then I have these paper that are very brown. And then this painting called the Yellow Wave. It's a series of painting that I investigate with a large brush stroke as a big symbol of a gesture. So this could look like Andy Warhol's Beautiful Woman's Blonde Hair, or Laurie Wittgenstein's, like, often use like this type of like, graphic style of brush stroke. And I sort of take that to the next level. I'm not really looking at their work, but I understand that references, but here I really heavily focus on the moment with the spontaneous brush strokes. And then I go around sort of like black outline everywhere. So I kind of try to capture that brush stroke in the moment and freeze to it. So it is representing something really go fast, but also like freeze in the moment. So once again, I'm really interested in the idea of like putting sort of two different things on my work, especially on my paintings. something old, something new, something fast, something slow. So there's lots of, I guess sparkles when I put two opposite things on the same time to create images. This one is also extension of that Korean folk art, the letter design paintings. This one called YOLO. You can kind of see, it looks like a Korean letter, but it's actually alphabet. So it's called the 무지개 YOLO, actually means rainbow YOLO. And I was thinking about how the patterns sort of like represent Korean traditional pattern, but here, gay culture, also Mexican, like Hispanic culture uses very similar rainbow patterns as well. So it become very universal as well. And then this one is print, it's called Genie. So here I use, images of Korean traditional, like the pot that dragon is coming out, but trying to catch the banana. And the banana here, as like iconography of fruit, but it's image that Andy Warhol used for Velvet Underground album cover. So that does not only represent like, second generation of Asia, but also reference Andy Warhol's Velvet Underground album cover. And for some of you don't know about the banana, it's kind of funny. I don't think it's a quite derogatory terms. I really don't think it that way, but I think it's kind of funny how second generation of Asian people, especially the one that I met when I taught high school student, they call themselves banana because they're white inside, the yellow outside, and mostly they speak English, but some of them don't speak Korean. So I really thought that was funny, and how tendency of people, like they always want to belong to a group, so that make them feel comfortable. They were always also looking for the people that are like them, so they want to belong to some like a bigger group. So I thought that was kind of funny and interesting. And then this one actually kind of folds into the 3D box shape. It's a takeout box. And this one also has influence of, Pennsylvania Dutch. And then in Pennsylvania Dutch, like there's also the twin birds, comes out very often. And I switch with the Twitter logo, Twitter birds. So the image itself can go 2D altogether, but when you fold it and then it becomes 3D. And this is actually lithography and what do you call laser cut. So you could kind of fold it easily. So this was really interesting project that I did with Lampo Presses down in Santa Fe. And actually this piece is in the show, in the group show right now. So once show opens, you guys can go see the show. And then I started making ceramic pieces, and then bunch of ceramic, like, fortune cookies. It's a symbol of misunderstanding of Asian culture. And for me, this is pretty much also a drawing and painting. So surface of ceramic, I practice painting and drawing. My act is the same where it's happening on the surface of like paper or canvas or on the ceramic, but how the viewers or history of art try to distinguish work, like where that they belong to. Is it craft? Is it fine art? Where is, like, they like to categories. They like to categorize things. And for me as an artist, I always feel like I want to be mischievous. I want to be a troublemaker. I want to create that are not very easy to distinguish or categorize, because the hybrid is very important issues in contemporary living as American, style. And what's originality really means to me, it's always questioned, because we always come from somewhere, and hybrid is necessary process. Like, you come from somewhere, but you start, like, receiving other culture, learning different things, and that environment changes you and your lifestyle, and you instantly blend in, assimilating that culture. And that, for me, that's a big part of American life. And the hybrid quality in my work sort of represent that. And then I have the reference photo here. This is Korean traditional object called the norige. And it's a woman's accessory. They wear them under their jacket. It's like 19th century object that also often indicate the social status. And as this is a traditional painter, 19th century Shin Yun-bok, who paints like a Korean beauty. You can see that lady's holding the norige right here. And then I have other reference photo. This is a K-drama, traditional drama that you could see here. The reference as a reference, this queen, she has a jade one with the silk tassel on the bottom and hand knotted elements on the top. So, but then as you see, the ladies who's serving her, they have the wooden ones, they have the fabric ones. So I wanted to create objects that are based on norige, but with using synthetic material. So you'll see later, I have the pictures. But here, this is Korean K-pop stars. They have this green hair, pink hair, and dreadlocks. This is another picture. I think it's Japanese cosplay that the Asian lady has blue eyes with the blue hair, which is kind of impossible things. But here, when we talk about identity is not something you're always born with. Nowadays in contemporary time, it's constantly shifting and changing. Also, you as a person, you could do that to yourself as well. Pony beads, this little girl has a different, hairstyles. And Marie Antoinette, the blue hair. And I found online, the internet, I thought that image is interesting. It's not a contemporary time, but they have this like over the top hairstyle with the weird color. And then I start making this object with the ceramic body and then hand knotted elements. And then instead of silk tassel, and I use synthetic hair. So I want to create the sort of hybrid form of object that are representing all sorts of different people and different cultures. And I wanted to make a lot of them. So I did make about 30, 40 of them together and then put them all together. So when you see them as a group and they look like they're standing, like all types of different people standing, in a one place, it's kind of cool. And I want them to be kind of whimsical, kind of powerful, and also really strange. At the same time, they look kind of familiar and with these strange objects. And then this is Mokaji installation view. And I had a show in 2013. And then as you can see, all my norige pieces, they're together. You can see my painting and the objects displayed in all in same place. And then I start making ceramic pieces of about little less than, I think over 5 years now, but I start making objects because I think that there's something really powerful about objects that painting cannot offer. I think that oftentimes painting can be really intimidating, but objects are so friendly because everybody decorate their house with the objects, also use like vessels and cups and bowls, it's really related to everybody's everyday life. And I wanted to bring that quality to my art practice. Then I start making, those fortune cookies sort of get on, abstracted, and then you can see the letter YOLO over here. And then on the surface, you can paint and draw. The action, like I said, is the same. And how we categorize it differently. And these are sculpture. And, I also kind of poke them and then cut them out, sort of referencing this isn't really a functional stuff. And that's one also good reason. And also second reason is that I sort of manipulate, abstract them. Also, oftentimes they look like emoji or a smiley face. So you kind of see those like iconography in a different way, recognize, oh, these are objects, they look like vessel, but it's not functional. And then I really love the idea of how, ceramic offers the opportunity to collaborate with me. So not everything that I put it in the kiln come out successfully, but also when you open the kiln, like, you take the work out and see how different they are from your imagination when you're thinking about your process. And that's also a good surprise. So for me, I always feel like I'm collaborating with the process of making ceramic work and then glazing as well. Nothing exactly comes out how I exactly expect. But like painting, like when you're painting and drawing, it's happening in front of your eyes. Ceramic is always sort of like one step, further, and it sort of like kind of blocks you to interrupt the process. So process itself for me is very attractive and interesting. And then the later work, as I start using a lot of like the darker earthenware and then start using glaze like a paint. So I partially glaze and then mostly like the part that I underglaze and paint a lot and I sort of like leave it raw. So the surface is like very much like a painting, similar to to my work on paper. And this is, I think it's done on porcelain. So the color's really bright and I really love using blue, especially on porcelain because it's so much resemble to traditional blue and white. And also you call it here Delftware, but it sort of resemble that. So for that reason, I use porcelain for especially blue and white. And then the installation format, you can see instead of using pedestal, I have a low table setting. And then this picture, actually, the art center director sent me this. This isn't Photoshop or anything. So they did have an event with like a cosplay for Japanese animation festival. And they just came in and then sat around my table. They were not supposed to, but I guess the table installation is very inviting and they took a picture. And when I saw this picture, I smiled because it was really kind of fitting to what I'm trying to do. It's kind of funny. And then this traveling exhibition went from 2015 until 2018 and over about 10 different institutions and museum went through, and I had low table installation setting like this. So I kind of feel like this is my version of Alice in Wonderland tea party, Mad Tea Party. So the vessel immediately could look like dishes or bowls or like, teapots. But then the people feel like really invited to sit on like a pillow. And one of the things that I really engage with this setting is they instantly feel like the viewers like instantly feel like they are very tall. And because this low table, like in Asian culture, we use the floor as sit down culture. Lots of people use the floor that way. So that I thought that was really interesting because they instantly have to move their body and lower their body to look at the object and walk around. And you can see the whole installation with my painting. My painting and like installation, sort of they're echoing each other. And the imagery that you see from my painting, they'll find it within my table installation as well. I feel like I'm going over time, so I'm gonna go a little faster. I put lots of reference photos and where I'm getting the idea of. So I kind of mix with my paintings and images. And then you know who she is, Princess Leia. And then I put the peach on the side. So this one called Leia. And then the hairstyle, I look at a friend or people and then sort of like connect with my sculptural pieces. And this is Korean drag queen, super popular in US called Kimchi. So I made my version of it. And then I started making a mask. So mask is like kind of like my current project that's going on right now, because it's 3D sculptural, but also I have a lot of spaces that I can still paint and draw. And then this is print, but I kind of wanted to show how they connect with each other in a way that, I work in all different media, but they're always very connected. So this is my last slide. I had a show at Decal Gallery right before pandemic happened in Lower East Side, New York, and with all my ceramic work only. So this is my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Jiha. It was so wonderful to see so much of your work. Thank you for such an incredible introduction for so many of our participants. At this point, we would love to open it up for questions. So you can unmute yourself and share a question, or you can share a question in the chat, whatever works for you. But we'd love to have some questions for the audience. Maybe until we get a question, I was really appreciated your discussion about this notion of hybridity in your work. And one of the things that is really attractive to me about your work is how you are working between media. So the ceramic work, the painting, you have both happening in your studio at all times?
Yeah, we moved to our new place about 3 years ago, and me and my husband looked for a space that we could have a large studio in suburb of Atlanta. So I have a large studio for my painting, and I have a small studio for my ceramic work. So I kind of go back and forth, and sometimes I need a better light. I bring my greenware to my painting studio and paint. But it is always interesting. Sometimes I work on ceramic and I worry about my painting. And then when I work on my painting and I'm worried about, I have to go back. What if they dry too fast? And I have to work on that because ceramic has a certain time period that I need to engage. So, but it is very similar to how my living situation, my life, like I'm a mother, I'm also a full-time professor at university, and I'm also an artist. So I do have lots of like a 3-4 different things going on always. And I used to worry about what if I do one thing really well and then fail on the other? But so it's kind of balancing act, it's been really challenging. And I was wondering if that is going to get better. But then now, instead of thinking about being failing in one thing over the other, and I'm just like busy trying to survive and trying to just live at the moment, each day, like I'm just focusing on one thing each day and not to worry so much about what's going to happen in the future. So yeah, it's been a quite interesting journey, like how I'm trying to do everything.
Yes. We just a comment in the chat, really wonderful experience, says Deidre, question of balance and the fantasy of focusing on just one thing really resonates. I think maybe for lots of us during the pandemic who are finding ourselves juggling multiple things, work, life in one space.
Yes, definitely. I can't enough to focus. I mean, it's just really weird because I'm in my bedroom slash office, and I teach in my bedroom where my table is, and I feel most relaxed. At the same time, my heart is beating. Sometimes I'm doing too much lecture with my student and like super busy at the same time. So it is really confusing time. And honestly, I'm not really good at multitasking. And when I'm teaching at the same time, I realize my son is also taking classes right across in his room. And then we come out and meet and high five and then go back to our bedroom and do things. And yeah, so I don't know, it's I feel that we are so disconnected physically,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I talked to one of my colleagues and she talks about how this time also trying to bring people together, because the more we physically separated, the more we wanted to get together. So people find a way to be connected and then, you know, discuss things and or share their feelings. And so it is like horrible time, but it's also wonderful things happening. I guess like we have to see it that way. Otherwise it'll be very hard to navigate this
Agree,
crazy time.
agreed. And I will acknowledge that one of the things that the pandemic has brought is these virtual conversations that allow you to join us from Atlanta without having to travel across the country. And so these artist talks have been really valuable in that regard. Judy, did you
Yeah.
have a question?
Yes, if appropriate, I'd like to ask a
Oh,
question to Jiha
Mm.
regarding the ceramics that she does. Do you have a full concept in your mind or on paper before you produce one, or does it evolve? Because it seems like you have a limited amount of time to work with the material, that if you leave too much open to just evolving, you may not finish what you want in
Right.
time. So
Yeah,
I was
that's a
curious
very
how your process for your ceramics, how you do that.
yes, it's a very good question. Both ceramic and my painting work, I do have a series. So I do have a strong concept, but I'm type of artist evolve with the process. And instead of following concept recipe one by one, I want to see what happens. So I kind of heavily rely on the process and I want the magical thing to happen. And it's very similar to raising a child, I guess, like a
Uh,
making art process. Because like if I lecture too much and then he'll kind of go opposite way. And I always trying to evolve with a process and I see what's happening and then respond to that. So, but I do have a boundary of like a bigger structure. So like I say, for my ceramic work, I have the series of Noriget as a one project that kind of has a format. And then I have a mask series going on. So I know that I'm making a mask for these pieces. And I do have 3D pieces. So I have three big category that I work on. And but other than that, I pretty much evolve. Like, you know, like I have a little plans, like, you know, like I said, when I'm using porcelain, I pretty much want to focus on drawing quality and then blue and white because porcelain takes it so wonderfully for that. So I use specific, like, you know, porcelain for it. And when I use like earthenware, darker clay, I wanted to have a raw kind of surface with lots of underglaze. So I do have a little things, but they're always interrupting, not always being successful, but I just kind of like, you know, follow with the process. And I do believe, and when I sort of leave it happen and experiment more, wonderful things happen. If I become more uptight and trying to control the wild horse, it become a little bit too tight, too, I guess, predictable. So I always like leave a room for me to experiment. And even though that kind of lead to a failure,
so
if
do
that
you
makes
work
sense.
on multiple pieces at the same time, or do you finish one and then move on to another
I
one?
do not ever finish one thing at a time. So I work multiple things. And whenever I work on something, and then I take a break from the piece and then go to next piece and then I rotate working on. And then where the moment that I have like, okay, I have a show coming up, I need to finish this series or this specific piece I've been like avoiding too much because I don't like to have problem. And then let's just dig it deep and then just work with this piece. And then I just really work on that specific piece. So it depends, but I do in general work on multiple things at the same time, especially in the beginning.
Yeah, I find your work fascinating. I lived in Japan, and anime highly influences, art in many, many mediums. And I like the fact that it's whimsical, but it can be serious too. It's sort of like two sides of the same coin. You could either approach it with eyes being very deep and serious, or just very whimsical and playful. So I
Oh,
like that
so
aspect
much.
of of the yin and yang of your art.
Thank you. That's a big compliment. Thank you so much. Well, my work, in a way, like I don't ever see my work political. I always tell people that I'm like a SpongeBob SquarePants. Like I'm like a sponge. I absorb people's energy. I absorb the reference, and then, I use that to make something. But my work become also humorous, and also it's very socially engaging. So it does talk about important issues, but not in a lecturish way. But like it's almost like a comedy, like like Saturday Night Live skit, like a skit, like it's like kind of funny, hilarious. But if you think about it, it talks about really important things. And I want my work to act that way because it's more inviting. Like nobody wants to sit down and listen to lecture. Like, especially I think about it, like, art history classes, like fall asleep, but those things are important. But like if you approach like really humorously, then people are more open and unguarded.
Mhm.
So I really want my work to kind of, work that way.
So I just want to acknowledge there's some great stuff in the chat right now. Eugene Park says, I love how the work is unapologetically Korean American, yet it is in a perpetual state of becoming. Thank you for generously and bravely adding multiple layers of identity and formations that are constantly evolving. And then a comment from Maria, very much enjoyed your talk and work. You mentioned identity, how some Asian Americans call themselves bananas, how identity doesn't necessarily correspond with what you're born with, like the young Asian woman with the blue contacts. How would you describe your own identity?
Well, identity is something really changing and shifting. So we used to think that in general, like, you're born with your identity, but I think that uh, layering and shifting identities is pretty much in the contemporary life. And like, if you see people like punk rock, like they dye their hair blue and pink, these Asian, K-pop stars, and they pretty much admiration of like, Western hip hop culture. They dye their hair and then braided their hair, dreadlock their hair. It's from their love and like respect, and that adds on their identity. How could you just only say that like you are born with just brown hair and like brown eyes and Asian? Like you move to different country, you live there for a long time, you sort of become like similar to their culture and adopt. And from just appearance, you can't really tell. But like the way you talk, the way you think, your working habits and your language, everything sort of affects, and then that become part of your identity. So I don't think that identity is something only born anymore. It's always constantly moving and shifting, and that we have to adopt that, and we have to also understand. And for me, the identity also exists within generation as well, as not much we talk about, because this in America, the racial issues become so huge, but the generational gap is still there too as well. Like when I look at Korean culture, there's a huge generation gap between the generation and misunderstanding that we actually have to overcome with that as well. And that also become your identity. I think that, what they call me Gen X, right? And they have a baby boomers, and this my son's generation, I don't even know what they call, and they all have the distinctive character. And I think that we all have to work together to communicate, and I want to acknowledge that in my work as well.
I think the next generation is Gen Z that's
Gen
coming.
Z,
Right?
yes.
Yeah. So there's a question from Kate just about the scale of some of your work. She's particularly asking about the Yellow Wave series with the blue dragon. What is the scale?
Yellow Wave with the blue dragon.
Mm.
I'm sorry, I should have all these captions.
Yeah,
Yellow
maybe,
Wave with the blue. Maybe print. I think she's talking about print. The genie print. I'm sorry, I'm like going back quickly.
no worries, it's good. Hopefully chime in. Anyone else with other questions, please, please.
I think it's like
share your
around
question.
20 something, 20.
Okay.
This one? I'm not sure. This is
Yes,
about,
she said that's the one.
yeah,
With the print.
this is actually print. So it's like 18, I don't know, 20 something by 18. I think it's like the medium large. So this is lithography and also screen print combined. And also this part, the wave, looks like a tie-dye, like a yellow tie-dye hair lock. That part actually chincolle, which is like mulberry paper printed, and then we cut it out very carefully and glued on. And then you see little like flowers over here. That's a nail decal. Do you guys know nail decals, like how they decorate fingers, right? And I was having fun with that, because like when people recognize what these are, they get excited, and it also bring the object itself, it has identity to it, right? So I want people to recognize what these are, because these are nail decals.
That's awesome. And what was the press? Where did you produce this?
This one I worked with Flying Horse Edition in University of Central Florida, Orlando.
Oh, wow. Great.
Yeah, it's I had so much fun. This is I also had fun titling. This is my genie, like dragon trying to come out of. So it's a little bit of magical realism. It's trying to come out of it and trying to catch the banana. And then people say that up here, this character is actually one of the character from Hopi Kachina doll. So it's like ogre, blue ogre or something. But of course I twist and change. And then people are talking about this figure looks so much like one of the character from Star Wars, Chewbacca or something. So yeah, so it's not originally like specifically based on one thing, but like as I change and like, you know, colors and shapes, and it kind of looks like something else.
That's great. I love it. Any other questions? Any other questions for the group?
I have a question. This
Great.
is Jim Singer.
Hi, Jim.
Jiha, I'm wondering if you ever use pen and ink in any of your paintings.
Oh yes, absolutely. I do. I use dipping pen. I don't use regular pen, ballpoint pen or anything. Oh, here actually I use pen. I'm sorry. I did use pen because I wanted those scale, looks like doodle. So I did use ballpoint pen here. But at very beginning, the very first painting that I showed, everyone's met here, that painting, this painting, you see these clouds. So I was looking at like Rembrandt's, like and those Renaissance sepia, you know, prints, and their etching looks so much like, you know, dipping pen, like, you know, cross hatchings, and line quality is very calligraphic. So I use dipping pen to do that. So there's lots of different mark makings here. So for me, the mark making is like how people communicate with that style. You know, when you look at it, you instantly kind of thinking about that, like, you know, ancient, like you know, Renaissance time, but like some area, you know, papers, like, you know, reacted differently. This actually clouds actually from one of Liechtenstein's like mark making, that like a big, I think an ice cream cup has a clouds coming out. It's a bubble, but then I expand it that way and then turn it into a clouds in my work. And then as a whole picture, when you see it, this looks like a face, but only with one eye, but that has this face, Cheshire Cat face, has a yellow bang. So I do have like a weird imagination when I paint, and I use lots of different styles. So I do use pen sometimes.
Excellent. Well, our time has come to a close. I want to thank Jiha for a really amazing talk with so much visual information. It's like just really phenomenal. Thank you so much. I hope that you all will be able to see Jiha's work in our exhibition. We are hoping to open soon. And just a reminder that our next artist talk in conjunction with Where the Heart Is, Contemporary Art by Immigrant Artists, will be on Friday, March 5th at the same time, 5 p.m. with Maria Paz. So you can sign up for that on our website. Thank you again, Jiha, for your time and for sharing your vision with all of us. This has been
Thank
really
you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time today. And thank you so much for such wonderful comments. And I get really inspired, and I can't wait to go back to my studio and work some more. You guys have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Bye.